What's up, guys? So today on the podcast, we're going to be reading off of I'm not going to be reading it. It's a very short question, but it was a question from Instagram that I got last week, and it's a different type of question. It does involve jiu-jitsu because, as we'll get into it, my life revolves around jiu-jitsu, but it was basically some advice that a young man was looking for, so we'll get into that question in just a few minutes. But again, thank you guys for joining us here on this fine Monday morning or evening or afternoon, or it may not even be Monday anymore. You might be listening to this in the future. And if you are, well, then I hope you enjoy that episode as well. But for those of you that are actually listening right now at the very time, it's Monday and you're driving to work or you're at home working from home because, there's a virus out there that won't let people work from offices and stuff. Eugene's over giggling. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the podcast, guys. As always, thanks to our sponsors. We've got Charlotte's Web. It's the CBD of choice for Eugene and I. I like the CBD a lot. I like their products. I think they make damn good products. They're third-party tested, so I know what the hell I'm putting into my body, which is important to me as kind of a nut for what I'm like. I was talking to someone about this morning. I'm really particular about the foods that I eat all throughout the day. So I live a pretty regimented life, and I'm very particular about the food that I eat because when I eat, I want to make sure that I don't get certain types of things in me because they make me feel sleepy or I don't feel good. So I don't like to eat out. I don't like, especially in the early part of the day, because when I'm going throughout the day, I've got to stay energetic and focused for all the different stuff that I have. But if I go and eat lunch somewhere, typically they use things like canola oils and stuff like that my body, I just don't like them. They use a lot more sugars and stuff and just different things and chemicals or even a lot of fat. It's stuff that I don't want. And so I like being able to make my own food so I know exactly what I'm getting. And it's kind of the same way with Charlotte's Web because they're third-party tested. So I know what's on the labels, actually what's in the box or what's in the package that they have, which is important to me so that if I get a particular effect from it, I want to make sure that I can make that consistent and stay regimented with it. And so again, I personally use their CBD products typically at nighttime, right before I go to bed, and it seems to help me a ton. I really like their tinctures. I like their gummies that they have that would come with melatonin, the little raspberry ones, and they've got the ginger ones, which are good. And then they've also got a new balm that we just tried, the
CBD Medic.
CBD Medic. That thing's pretty nice. I put it on. It's like an icy hot with CBD, basically. That's what it feels like, but it's really hot. So maybe closer to tire balm. But it's fantastic. I've put it on after after a hard training session. And it's been great for kind of relieving some aches and pains and stuff like that, especially if I do a heavy squat day. Sometimes my knees can get a little achy, or even sometimes after a hard training session, just different parts of my body will ache, and I'll put it on there, and it does definitely help with some of that pain, so I'm sleeping. So you guys can check out any of that stuff if you want to on their website at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Chewjitsu. Save 15% on the order. And thanks again to our sponsor, Matt, over at Epic Roll. Matt's been sponsoring the podcast it's been some months now.
Yeah.
I'm actually wearing the shirt right now.
The Triangle Choke?
The Triangle Choke shirt. I like this shirt. So I've told the story before, but I was in a grocery store on a Sunday morning. I like to do my shopping a lot of times on Sunday morning because usually early Sunday morning, 7 o'clock Sunday, because nobody's there. I don't like going in the grocery store when there's a lot of people. So I like going there early so I can get in, get out. And I was wearing this Triangle Choke shirt. And it's basically this Triangle Choke, and then it has a definition of what it is. And when I'm walking through, I just noticed that people kept staring at it, what? They kept reading it. You could see them. I remember I was getting some bananas, and this woman's looking at it across from the other section, and she's staring at it, squinting, what does it say? And I didn't know what they were looking at. I thought that I probably spilled some food on myself because I have a tendency to eat like a 5-year-old. I spill food on myself all the time, and then I look down later on. I was like, oh, it's the shirt. And so, again, I think it's a cool shirt. It's a comfortable shirt, but I like jiu-jitsu shirts that are. What's the word that you might use? Tasteful, clever, interesting, something like that. When I was a younger guy, I remember I had a Gameness shirt. It was a long time ago, back when Gameness would have pit bulls and stuff all over the logos. And the back of the shirt, this tell you what
I think it's subtle. They're subtle.
Subtle, yes. Well, this shirt was not subtle. I was a little turd burger, and this will give you an idea of who I was when I was 18. So, I was one of those guys that was doing jiu-jitsu, and I'm like, I'm so cool, I'm doing jiu-jitsu, I could probably beat you up. And the back of the shirt said, if you're scared, say you're scared. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. It's so stupid, but I thought it was cool. It's yeah, say you're scared because I do jiu-jitsu. Such an idiot. It's what happens when you give like a 19-year-old kid, 18-year-old kid jiu-jitsu and wrestling, and he thinks he can do everything.
Well, you give them like, it's almost like you give them like a
superpower,
a secret superpower.
Give them a superpower.
It really is.
Because I could take grown men and like tie them up in knots, and they couldn't do anything. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I remember people would come up to me and say, instead of like looking at the shirt and like just kind of interestingly, they'd say, I'm not scared, or I'm scared. Why should I be scared? You know, and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, he has a lot of cool shirts, a lot of cool rash guard shorts, the whole thing. Any jiu-jitsu related gear that you'd like to check out, head over onto his website at epicrollbjj.com. Promo code is jiu-jitsu, save 15% on the order. And guys, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by heading on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast, and you can get it for less than $0.25 a day. We just made a few uploads that'll be going on in the back end soon. I've got one where there's a video of me talking about kind of some of the stuff we're going to talk about here today. There's also a rolling video, a narrated roll with me and one of my students, where I was particularly working on passing one side of his guard, and he was working on using one side of his guard, and it could be a useful lesson if you're watching that to sort of how you can train. And along with that, there's hundreds of pieces of content from all the episodes that we've had, as well as full-length seminars, stretching videos, warm-up videos, I mean, the whole darn thing. So if you want to check out some of that stuff, it's at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast.
Yeah, we just released the one. There's one you're actually talking about, like how you meal prep. It's just some tidbits and some like good.
I'm just showing like
on
literally
like,
what I'm eating.
Right.
Yeah.
So people ask you all the time. I think it's you just break it down. It's super easy. It's a quick video. It gives you good bang for your buck. So you get a good idea on your. Because people always ask you a lot about like what your diet looks like and kind of
I should probably do a video one day just to go through. This is what my day looks like. It's very regimented. Here's what it looks like. Yeah, so that's it. So with all that said, you've been with us for a few minutes, if you're still listening, and let's get into the podcast. What's up, guys? So today on the podcast, I wanted to go off of a question. It's a little bit of a different podcast. It's not the normal jiu-jitsu related podcast, although there will be some jiu-jitsu parts to it. But I got a question on Fridays. A lot of times I'll do this thing where I answer a bunch of questions in my stories. If you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen this before, but I'll just basically post up in the morning that little form that says like ask me a question, and then throughout the day I'll answer about 50 to 60 questions from people and just kind of do them, off the cuff. But I got a question from a young guy, and after I answered the question in the video, in my stories, I got a bunch of replies from it. People were saying that it resonated with them, or asking me to go a little bit deeper from it because they found it helpful and they're younger and they're going through some stuff. And so I figured I would just kind of dive into the question a little bit, because it's advice that was given to me and I didn't really understand it at the time when it was given to me when I was 19. And then as I got older, the advice became really useful. And so basically the question that the guy asked was life advice for a young man, right? And this guy's a young guy. He's kind of coming into, he's 18 years old, so he's becoming an adult. And again, that's kind of a scary time for a lot of people where, I know at least for me, I was like terrified when I was 18 years old about what the hell am I going to do with the rest of my life. And even if you're not 18 years old, if you're in your 20s, I mean, this fear of like ending up a complete failure or not doing something with my life, that pervaded throughout my 20s as I was kind of figuring out my own path. But there was a piece of advice that was really useful to me that I got from one of my mentors. And he told it to me in a roundabout way, but basically what he said was design your life. Be very deliberate about what you choose to do with your life and live it in, the way that you want to. And I say this, again, this maybe, I don't know what this says to you or how you feel about this, but you think about people. People put a lot of conscious focus and detail into a lot of different things. So I have some friends that are really into cars, and they will mull over every detail about those cars. They'll look at every little trim thing. They'll look at the type of engine that's in there, and they'll tweak that stuff out there. The interior is done just so. People's homes, they'll go into every little detail about their homes, the decor, everything else. You have all these different things, the clothes that people wear. You look at someone, they spend 3 hours just to get ready or something because they can't decide the outfit and the right colors and then the makeup and everything, whatever it is. And then when it comes to their own life, how do you want things to look? How do you want your life on a day-to-day to look? People don't put that same attention in a lot of cases to that. They just kind of go, just they let it happen. They just let it happen by happenstance. Oh, well, this is the way it's going to work. And when you bring this up to people, a lot of people will make these excuses. Oh, I can't do that because I've got kids. Well, I can't do that because I have a job. I can't do that because I have this, that, what. You insert the thing, I mean, there's a lot of excuses that get thrown around, but I think it's a lot of times it's super important. I'll talk about kind of how to take that thing back. But when this was told to me when I was 19, it made no sense. I didn't understand, like, well, what does this mean, design your lifestyles? Like, because he was like the only guy that I knew that was a business owner, so I didn't know anybody that like did that. I remember I'd call the guy up. He'd be taking a nap in the middle of the day. And I was like, how do you take naps? He's like, well, because that's how I design things. He's like, I work more in the evening than I do in the middle, earlier in the day, because that's when I want to work. And I have systems in place that help the managers run the businesses that I own, and these things. And he basically just had it all down to like a system. And I remember he would say this to me, it didn't make any sense. And then I remember I had two sort of experiences in my life where this really like clicked. So the first one was when I was in my early 20s, because I wanted to be a good guy. I wanted to achieve something in my life. I went through and bought a home, bought a car, had a dog, had a girl that I assumed that I probably was going to marry. And we got a place together and was doing the whole thing. I was working a ton of hours. Had a ton of debt and was doing the damn thing. I felt like I was being a good citizen, being a good man, doing what I'm supposed to do. And then the girl cheated on me, left me, and then that was that. And so then I was left with all this stuff. And it basically, there was a point where that advice came back to me. Hey, like, design it, right? And I remember taking a vacation of sorts down to my coach now, to Nashville MMA, to train with Sean Hammonds, to my coach now. And I went down there for a week with my friend. And when I came back, I looked at the way things were done there and how he was living and things like that. And I kind of wanted to live in a certain way similar to that. Training jiu-jitsu, teaching things like that, that would be cool. That I thought. So I was like, well, I started writing it down in a journal, exactly how I wanted my life to look. And, it was probably about a year and a half, 2 years later, that's what ended up happening. In 2010, I started making those things a reality. I started teaching jiu-jitsu, doing these things, and kind of took some leaps of faith to do it. And then I remember sort of this happened again, where my life kind of got away from me, because as I got a little bit older and was like started to get to build a couple other businesses on the side, all of a sudden I was working from 5:30 in the morning. I'd get up at like 5:30, 4:30 in the morning. I'd get home at 11 at night sometimes, oftentimes. And I would work like this for, Monday through Friday, and I'd work on Saturday and Sundays as well. I mean, I was working all the time. And it got to the point where I'm thinking about it. I felt like I felt like I had almost become a slave to my work schedule, because I was just working all the time. And, I really hadn't put any conscious thought into what I should or shouldn't be doing or whatever. I just kept taking on more. And so when, a new task would come on, I'm like, I'll do this because I'm supposed to do this, and I'm supposed to do that, and I'm supposed to do this. This is, supposed to. And I remember my mentor, going back to him, I remember he did this thing where he would go on vacations. And it seemed weird to me at the time, but he'd go on these solo vacations to Florida, where he said he would just journal and think about his life and the way that things were going, meditate, and just kind of just let it stew on his brain. What did he want to do with his life? Where is it going? How is it? Just kind of taking assessment. And so I did that. I remember I took a vacation to Florida, which has since become kind of a tradition for me. I'd go by myself, take a week off, and get away from everyone. Get away from everyone that I know, get away from everything that I'm normally doing, and just sort of take a step back and look at it from a distance, right? Because like if you're in the forest, if you're so close to the tree, you're there, you can't really see what's going on around you. But when you take a step out, you can kind of see the forest around you, and you can actually see what it looks like. And it's the same thing with your life. A lot of times, when you're in the middle of it, you can't see what's going on sometimes, and it's helpful to take that step back. If you've ever been in like a really crappy relationship before, where it wasn't a good thing, but you stuck it out for some reason because you didn't realize how bad it was. But then when you're no longer in the relationship, you look at it from a distance and you're like, whoa, why the hell did I stick around there for so long? But getting back to it, I went down to Florida and I wrote in a journal and was, writing out exactly how I would want my days to look like. And like I was basically essentially creating positions for people that I would need to hire, because I'm like, well, I'm going to have to hire people to do these things and these things, whatever, because I can't just do all this stuff and whatever else. And basically thinking about the things I should be doing and the things I don't want to do, and then paying someone to do those things, this kind of thing. Just kind of designing out, putting it all together. And again, about a year later, I mean, literally I have it written down in my journal. It was the days that I had laid out for myself almost exactly came true to a T, which is weird to me because I didn't go back to it like every single day, but it was just kind of what happened. And, so it's important to design your lifestyle. And the thing that I think is really hard for most people, if you're a younger man or woman coming up, is that when we're younger, we just get told what to do. Right? We just get told to do this and do that and do this and do that. And we just take on all this. I think it's Nietzsche and Zarathustra. Can't say, I have trouble saying it. He talks about the, people going through this metamorphosis. It's like the three metamorphoses: becoming a camel, taking on the burden, eventually becoming a lion, and then eventually becoming a child. But, he talks about the dragon, which on each scale of the dragon is a thou shalt, right? You're supposed to do this. Thou shalt do this. Thou shalt do this. And so he, talks about taking the no back, because the no is typically robbed from us when we're younger. We're not allowed to say no very often. And so you have to kind of take it back. So one of the things that's really important is when I got older, if you're going to design your lifestyle, that means you're going to have to say no to things.
Yeah.
Even if they're things that seem good, So again, for me, if I could go back and talk to myself when I was younger, I would have said, because I didn't really want to buy the house. I didn't want to buy the cars, all those things. But the girl that I was with, she wanted to.
Yeah.
I would have gone back and said, no, don't do it because you don't want to in your gut. In your gut, you're saying don't do this. Because what happened was when I got in debt, I couldn't compete as much as I wanted to. I couldn't train as much as I wanted to. And I was stressed out for several years getting out of that stuff.
Yeah. And
then fast forward, as I started to kind of create the businesses and stuff, there were things that I didn't really want to do that I would just do because I felt like I was supposed to. And again, you had to say, no, don't do it. Like if it's not what you need to do, then don't do it. You can say no. It's okay to say no.
Right.
Now there's consequences to saying no. Sometimes you may be giving up a little bit of money or you might be giving up something, whatever, but you still say no. Mm-hmm. You can say no if you want to. It could even be like, do you want to spend more money on some more expensive car? Well, if it's not not a part of your lifestyle design, then don't do it. Right. Say no. And so for me, that was like something like when the guy said that life advice, for a young man, I was like, man, I'm thinking to myself, if I could go back, I would tell myself first, put some effort into actually designing your lifestyle. So this mentor that you have, he's talking about him, really take that advice home and really put some thought into how you want your life to be lived on a day-to-day basis. And again, it doesn't have to be anything that you don't want it to be. Just think about what you would want it to look like. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen instantly, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to have to every now and then eat crap from time to time. Because sometimes when you're getting things started and you got to dig down and you got to put your nose to the grindstone, you got to do what you got to do. But having some plan of how you want it to look at some point, super important.
Yeah.
And then also being able to say no to things. That's something that's super, super powerful. Just say no to things that you don't want to do sometimes. Doesn't mean that you're not ever going to have to do things you don't want to do, because I have to do things I don't want to do all the time. Because like there's different business-related stuff that I don't necessarily want to do, but I'm the only person that can do them. So I got to do them. But there's other things that you can say no to that you don't have to do, that a lot of times people will do out of consistency or, because we're brought up to be good boys and good girls,
right,
to do things. Be good. Do what you're told, right? So you just do it. And you don't always have to. There's times where you don't have to do those things, and kind of being able to assess which ones you do have to do and which ones you don't. And the things you don't have to do, don't do them. Yeah. Even if maybe someone gets a little ticked at you or whatever, just don't do it.
Yeah.
You don't have to. So that was some of the advice that, I would have, that I shared on the Instagram post, and it's something that I would have told myself to do when I was, say 18, 19,
yeah,
back in the day.
The hardest part of saying no to me, and you can kind of take us through a little bit what your thought process is on saying no to, maybe an opportunity or something that may be, offered to you. But the hardest part for me about saying no, there's probably two things. One is if it's an individual friend, mm-hmm. I have a hard time saying no because I don't want to hurt their feelings or hurt our relationship. That's one. But sometimes it doesn't, because if you do something, they ask you to do something, you do it and you resent them for it, then you're kind of just, you're damaging that relationship anyways. Mm-hmm. And then just choosing, how do you, in your opinion, how do you choose what you want to say no to? Because I don't want to miss an opportunity. I don't want to say no to something And I was, oh man, if I would have said yes to that, I would have had this amazing opportunity. So I don't want to miss out. So those are the two things. If it's a person, I don't want to necessarily, damage that. Saying no, hurting somebody's feelings kind of thing, because you care about, your friends. And then just not wanting to miss an opportunity. So like, what's that process for you, do you think?
Well, first off, I mean, if it's with your friend, if your friend's asking you to do something that obviously, if your friend's in trouble, and they need help and whatever, that's a different situation. But if they're asking you to do something, you say no, if they get upset with you, that's on them. It's not on you. Right? Like, I mean, because again, if they're asking you to do something and you're like, well, that's just, I don't have the time for that right now, whatever else, and you say no to it, you don't have to be mean, but you can tell them no. If they get upset, that's on them. It's not on you. Yeah. Right? Like, so that's just the way it is, because a lot of times people will get angry or whatever, but if they get angry, that's on them. It's not like you did something, like if you were doing something out of the drive to make them angry, it's different. Sure. But if you're just like, literally, man, I can't do this because it's just not going to work out. Nothing wrong with that. That's about setting your boundaries. Right. You have to have boundaries. Like, it's super, super important. You have to have some sort of boundaries, because if you don't, it just becomes chaos, right? If everything is just porous, there's no boundaries, and going back to as far as the opportunities go, I mean, that's a tricky thing, but I think it really goes back to like, what do you want your life to look like? Does this add to or subtract from? Right. So for instance, like maybe sometimes every now and then I'll get invited to be on a podcast. Yeah. On like another podcast. And sometimes I'm like, I don't want to do it. I'm tired of it, whatever. Because I'm just like, I got stuff going on. But I'm like, you know what? It can't hurt. It's like be on this podcast and have a conversation, and someone might hear it. Yeah. Could lead to something. But then it'll be something where, hey, Chewy, we I'll get contacted from someone and they'll want me to, like, there was this one thing where they wanted me to produce this content for this thing, this like virtual seminar thing that they were doing. Yeah. And, I literally just didn't have time. I wanted to do it, but I was just like, man, like, I don't have time to do that. Yeah. It's like, so I was like, I told them no, Yeah. And again, it was an opportunity, but it did not contribute to anything that I was doing. And it was too much work that I had on the plate. And if I would have tried to do that, I would have stretched myself too thin. And again, it would have taken away from what I wanted to do, So I said no. Now again, there's times where you have to judge it, and everybody's different. Sometimes you're gonna, every opportunity is kind of like a swing at, taking a swing at the plate when you play baseball, right? Sometimes you hit it out of the park, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get on base, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's a strike. Sometimes you thought you did something really cool and it just doesn't work. But it's just one of those things where you got to use your best judgment. But a lot of times it's very easy, because a lot of times here's what happens. Like, I can think about some of the worst decisions I've made, and in my gut, I knew I didn't want to do them. In my gut, I didn't feel like it was going to be good. In the intuition of my body was like, this isn't a good one. But I did it anyway, and then I regretted those decisions. Like you said, maybe someone asks you to do something and you do it, but you're resenting it the whole time. Terrible place to be, because you don't want to do it.
Your best work doesn't come from there.
Oh, no, your work's not going to come through. Your work's going to be terrible. It's even like... when I write, for instance, like I write my emails, and I wrote one recently where I was talking about going into Qdoba or Chipotle, with a friend of mine, and she had a black eye. And she had a black eye from training, not from me. But I remember replaying this image in my head of this whole happening, and it made me laugh. So I'm writing this email to everybody, laughing my butt off at the computer. Jess is looking at me like, "What are you laughing about?" And I was like, "You'll see tomorrow when the email goes out in the morning." So I'm writing it out, and I'm laughing about it. So then, like, when they got it, that came through the message. So they're sending me messages back, like, "Bro, this was hilarious," whatever. And so yeah, if you're resentful, you trying to put out content, it's going to be resentful. Yeah. Whatever thing you produce is going to be resentful. And it's not going to be good. So a lot of times you can kind of go off your gut and be like, this isn't what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And a lot of times we just choose to ignore it because we feel like we're supposed to do something because we need to be good, or even for sheer consistency. A lot of times we get put into boxes and we think we have to stay in that box. Like, oh, well, I'm, this person, so I have to do this because that's who everybody thinks I am. And a lot of people around us will want us to be that way. For instance, you will have friends and family members and stuff like that will want you to stay the same. They don't want you to change because they know who you are, and it makes things easy. All of a sudden, if you start changing, then people kind of sometimes take offense to it. They're like, oh, well, you think you're too good now, or, whatever, this kind of stuff. And as you begin to change, so.
Yeah, what did you, like, you talked about, I remember you sharing the story you were driving, and Derek's the guy at the gym that owned the gym at the time, and you kind of realized your life was not going maybe exactly how you wanted. You couldn't quite train like you wanted, and you wanted to have a bigger part in jiu-jitsu, or jiu-jitsu have a bigger part in you. And you were like driving and at night, and then all of a sudden you called them. You're like, dude, I want to do this full time. Like, what was like for people out there that maybe already have a career or have something they're looking to change gears? Like, what was the turning point for you, and how do you feel like somebody could possibly use that information to help them decide if they should kind of switch gears on their life?
Yeah, I mean that would be tough. Like if you were in a situation where you had kids and a home and a wife and stuff like that, that's going to be different. That would be more something up your territory where you're shifting and pivoting slowly. With me, it was something where I was younger. The house payments were no longer there because I'd gotten out of the house stuff and was just driving around. So I lived in an apartment at the time. And I'd gotten myself down to working part time, and so I was driving one night and I realized I had to get up on Sunday morning, and it was 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about it, and I was like, what am I hanging on to? I just didn't know. Like, what am I hanging on to? Because I don't like this. I don't enjoy what I'm doing right now. And there's an opportunity at the gym, and I just, for some reason, I felt that there would be something there. If I just took the chance, took the leap, like I was like, maybe if I do something, maybe it'll work out. I just kind of had a hunch. And I jumped. The only thing is I tell that story, and sometimes I leave out a certain part of it. Originally, what I thought I was going to do is I was going to transfer my work shift to third shift.
Yeah, you take the safest route you can.
Yeah,
right?
So I was going to work third shift, and then I was going to train in the mornings, jiu-jitsu, teach in the mornings, teach evening, and sleep in the middle of the day, teach at night, and then go back to work third shift. And then the first night I worked third shift, I remember I'm falling asleep at my desk, like trying to stay awake, can't stay awake. Get home, and I remember it was Memorial Day of 2010, and I'm laying there trying to sleep. Have the blackout curtains and stuff. Like I cannot sleep. It's like 2 p.m. Cannot sleep. I'm like, this is terrible. So I said, screw it. I'm not going back. And that was kind of that was like the cause I was trying to do it halfway, and then I was like, all right, I just got to do it. And I ended up moving back with my mom for a bit. So again, I ended up moving back with my mom, which normally isn't a good thing. It's not something that we feel proud of or excited about, but it was for a reason. It wasn't because I was just like an utter failure. It was because I was going in a different direction.
It takes humility to do that, though. Like it takes a lot of swallowing your pride to be like, all right, this is the best thing for me. And it's like a dog with his tail between his legs going home, but it really, you're trying to give yourself the best springboard to be successful. And I try to listen to all kinds of, read books and audiobooks, So Dave Ramsey's kind of one of those, I'm always interested in like financial stuff.
Yeah.
And so Dave Ramsey's one of those guys, very kind of polarizing, very different.
I like his quote I love his, he has that saying, live like.
You have to live like no one else so you can live like no one else.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah, it is. And so I listened to his audiobook, and that was just something that stuck out to me. It's like, maybe you have to kind of suffer a little bit in the short term so you can, enjoy the fruits of your labor in the long term,
Well, it's like Earl Nightingale said this. And he was like one of the pioneers of like self-development material, and like he was on records. Like he's like, imagine like self-development records, right? And he had those things, and but he has a thing. You can listen to it if you want. It's the program is called Lead the Field.
Okay.
And one of the things he says in Lead the Field is like, if you don't know what to do, just look around at what the majority's doing and just don't do that, and you'll probably be more successful, right? So like, and people, maybe this makes people feel bad, right? But if you think about it, like most people do certain things that everybody can collectively says they're pissed off about. They hate it, right? Well, I'm like, why are you doing it? And so for me, one of the things,
supposed to,
because you're supposed to.
I think we did certain things. Like for me, it's different in some ways because like my family immigrated, and it's like you're gonna be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a dentist. They were a little bit out of sorts with me saying I want to be a physical therapist, which is a great career, field. Yeah. And I didn't want to be a dentist. We were talking about this off the podcast. I don't want to stare in people's mouths all day long.
If you're a dentist, by the way, there's no shame. Just Eugene, he doesn't.
And
like
your
teeth.
posture will be terrible, by the way.
Yeah.
But anyways, not your but you'll have pain. It's not the best. It's not the best physically. Like physically, it's actually harder on your body. People don't think that.
I'm sure
it's tough as shit on your body. You're hunched over. Like
it's even like barbers. Like when my my barber
neck
like
problems all the time.
Shoulders and stuff. You know?
Shoulders, necks. But anyways, like yeah, and so like for me, my parents took this huge risk immigrating to this country so that I could have a solid foundation, a solid chance, so I maybe wouldn't have to take as much of a risk.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I was like, I don't have like the luxury to be a risk taker. I don't want like my family did all this to bring us to this country so we have opportunity, and then like I squander it by playing video games or something.
Yeah, of course.
Whatever. Which people now are very, very successful playing video games, which is awesome. I think it's the coolest thing. It is, because you know what? Your parents like, don't play video games, and now you can have a successful career.
Money,
you can make whatever, Twitch and all that stuff.
Sure.
But taking some of those risks is at times a challenging thing, but it's valuable, and I think that's the only way you're going to be able to kind of have a life maybe that you see as worth living.
Mm-hmm. I'll say this: one thing that I was benefited with or blessed with was that I never really, because I grew up so poor, and we didn't. And it's so funny. Like sometimes I'm oblivious. I didn't realize we were so poor. Right? Like I thought everybody's mother like went and gave plasma.
Having good parents, man.
Well, I mean, like I thought everybody's mother went to go give plasma to pay the rent. I thought everybody used the food stamp books to pay for their food.
Your norm is fucking different than anybody else's. Man.
I thought everybody's car would like all four doors in the station wagon would no longer work, and the only thing that worked was the back hatch where we would climb in after church and stuff. I thought that was normal, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was normal for you to have your mom, 2 sisters, and yourself to live in a 1-bedroom apartment and to sleep in a reclining chair. Like I thought that was normal. It's just what it was. It was never like there was never a woe is me about it. We were just, it is what it was.
What does that say about your mom? Or about like
she was a tough woman. She was a tough woman.
What does that say? Like, not necessarily that she did all those things, but like it was just like the norm. Like it didn't seem like you guys were different. I think that says something about creating a certain type of.
Well, she never said anything about it. Like so we.
It was just always kind of.
I knew people that had it better. I knew because I'd go to people's houses and I would see that they had their own bedroom.
Of course.
I didn't have my own bedroom, at least for a certain time. But when my mom was first getting off of alcohol, it was tough. She was a tough woman. She was pulling shit together. But there was never a woe was me about anything. It was just we did what we did.
It wasn't a victim mentality.
Not at all. It was just we just did what we did. Like she pulled herself together. I mean, and then fast forward about 5 years afterwards, she really had a lot of stuff together, and we had a house, and she was living in there, and she was working her tail off. So she was a tough woman, but I grew up with not necessarily always needing stuff, and then even like when I got older, if I wanted stuff, I used to like cut grass, rake leaves, sell stuff, like whatever, just different stuff. And then I started working. I got my first job when I was 14, working at a restaurant as a busboy, and then ended up, serving. So just make your own money. If I wanted something, I'd go buy it, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you at a very young age, when you have the actual benefit of like, so I earned X amount of dollars, and now I want this thing costs X amount of dollars. Like I remember when I wanted a PlayStation, so I had to save up to buy the PlayStation. Mm-hmm. And that PlayStation had a lot of value because it cost like $300 or whatever it was, and $300 was a lot of money for me at the time. It's a lot of yards cut. And so you start to, when you have to pay for things, you start to make like value judgments. Do I really want that? That's going to cost a lot of money. Do I really want that? Yeah. And so I never, like when I was younger, like for the most part, and throughout my adult life, when I made the decision for myself, see, like when with the house and stuff, the girl was making the decision. Nothing wrong with her. That's just the relationship we had, right? You may not be like that. I don't want people to go, Chewy thinks all women are all about the money or something. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the relationship we had, she pulled me into this.
That's your dynamic.
Yeah. And so she's like, I want the house. And I wanted to please her. So I was like, whatever.
Of course.
Mistake. But when I make my decisions about what I want, generally I'm a pretty like frugal person. I'm generally low key because I'm not really worried about keeping up with the Joneses. Right? I don't care about all this stuff. Like I care about keeping things low. And so one of the benefits I did have is I never really got myself too swamped in debt besides that the house and stuff that was able to be, sold off and everything else. Everything else was like, for the most part, pretty like low key. And, I even remember a friend of mine, we were talking on, and he was a guy who he had like, to me, like I thought he had it made. Like I thought he was just the dude, as far as like money and all that kind of stuff. And I remember telling him when I just took the leap, I remember him going, man, you're so lucky. I was like, lucky? And at the time, I'm sleeping on an air mattress that deflates halfway through the night. I don't feel so lucky. Because when I moved back to my mom's house, I was sleeping in kind of this little bedroom that had kind of been converted into like a storage room of stuff. And so like in between there was like I had an air mattress and I had 2 hampers, one with clean clothes, one with dirty clothes, and then the rest of my stuff was in storage. And I was just sleeping on that air mattress, and I would fall, it would slump in. So I'm like curled up, and I'd have to press the button in the middle of the night twice or something. But I didn't feel lucky. But he was just saying that he even recognized it himself. He said, man, whenever I make money, I spend more money. Whenever I make more money, I spend more money. And so I'm always in this trap. He's like, you aren't, and so you can take leaps. You can do whatever the hell you want to do. And so one of the things I would say is, regardless of who you are, I mean, like, again, going back to Dave Ramsey, he's a big proponent of that. And there's a lot of people that turn themselves around because, if you're going to spend money, make sure it's something you want. Like this, maybe this will be interesting for people to hear. So, I mean, because I don't know what people think about me as far as like whatever, like, but I make a good living. I make a damn good living, right? With the businesses that I own. But a couple of years ago, because Jess and I, we were living in a house and we wanted to, she had a little bit of debt when we first met, and she was going to need a new car. And, I wanted to save up and have a solid chunk for like a down payment because we wanted to get a place, either a nice house or a place with some land. And so we were like, so we ended up moving in an apartment. It's a little small bedroom, one bedroom apartment that we live in, which is for her and I, it's fine, right? But we save up so much money, right? So in the time, we have no debt. She well, I didn't have any, but she didn't have any debt. We bought our car cash, bought me a car cash, and we have a nice chunk, and we're looking for a place now. We're like, we're looking for a place that we want to get, and we're looking for a place, preferably with some land if we can find it, a few acres, and then whatever. So again, we made that decision a couple of years ago to do that intentionally, right? We're like, look, what do we actually want at the end of it? Well, we want this. Well, let's do this then, and so we did that intentionally. And so for some people, I think like one of the things that was helpful to me is that I didn't really care about not having a bunch of stuff. I'm not trying to have the biggest ball in car. I don't care about that stuff. And I'm not worried about necessarily people's perception of me. And that was helpful because then that allowed me to make moves that weren't based upon fear of what are they going to think about me, and can make better decisions for where I wanted to go long term based upon the way that I want my lifestyle to look. And so for going back to your question, I've friggin' jumped all over the place with this thing. But I think it would be good, like, if people just be mindful of, because money is a thing that I have no ill will towards money. You just have to understand what you're spending your money on. I think for people, if they're like thinking about what they want to do, they really need to be very conscious about where does your money go? Where do you spend it? And what do you allow yourself to get sucked into? And again, having the power to say no, either to someone else or even to yourself.
Right. Well, I think that guy you were talking about that was jealous of you, you had a simplicity to your life. Like there wasn't all these moving parts. It was like everything's simple. There's not a lot, there's not a lot of moving parts. Like I don't have all these expenses. Everything's just kind of, so I'm able to leave, or I'm able to, try these things. There's not a ton of risk because if I make this leap and maybe I fail, well, I'm just back where I was. I'm not like down in more debt and doing all this stuff. So I think the simplicity, like almost like having more things, it's almost like it puts you in a bigger cage. Like it almost like, because you're indebted to more stuff. Like there's more stuff that requires your attention, and money, to me, I think about money as energy. It's like your energy. Like you're putting energy in this thing to receive this thing.
Well, you work to get that money.
Exactly.
Right? So it's
like your energy. It's like, where's your energy? If your energy is being expended in all these other areas, then you can't take all your focus and all your energy and all your money towards this one thing you want to accomplish.
Sure.
Which I think is, simplification of your life. And like I said, like I've always been someone that, we got some debt and stuff, but like I've always been like very much about simplifying my life and not having a bunch of erroneous stuff I just need to like pay for that. Like buying a car, like I drove, like when we bought my wife's car, we bought her, we didn't have a ton of money. We got together and we went to this place in Indiana that sold hail damaged cars, which basically on the outside they look like just a beat up golf ball, but on the inside it's like we got out of this Camry, and it was like V6 all leather. We get in, this thing is just like floats. It's just, we drove that car everywhere, and on the outside it looked like crap, but on the inside it was awesome. Like ice cold AC. Like she used to drive this Ford minivan,
sweating her butt off,
that had no let me tell you the story about when we first met. That was hilarious. We started kind of dating, and she had this van, so she would drive about 70 minutes from Lexington to Louisville, and like it would be hot as shit. It was so hot, and she would like pull up, she'd be driving literally in a bathing suit with the window open. And you know, she's like driving past truck drivers and stuff, and they're all looking at her. I remember pulling up, I lived in a condo at the time. I remember pulling up, and like her like leg is like out the like the window,
trying to get some air.
She's so hot.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you doing? But you know, like we didn't have a ton of money, but like we didn't care as much about cars, which I love to have a nice car. I have a decent car now.
Yeah, you got a good car.
But like, you know, it's nothing extravagant, and like to me it's like I'd rather spend my money like experiencing life, or doing a vacation or something.
Well, and there's a time, like, so for instance, I've put myself in debt at times for things that were assets, like a good deal in a house, or a business, like buying into a business, or buying a business, like, or even spending some money to get things going on a business. I'll do that.
I think there's a difference to that. The difference is like if you buy a car, you're like not planning on making a return, like, and you're not investing to make more money back.
No.
When you're doing that, like on a house,
not unless you're like one of those dudes that like does car flipping.
Yeah, you buy like a cheap car and flip it. But yeah, like I think that's a different type of debt.
Yeah,
in my opinion. But again, you know, everybody's got, like, if that's something you love to do, if you love like a really nice car and that makes you happy and you get joy out of it, like genuine joy of like a beautiful car that like has just muscle to it, and it accelerates and makes that, you know, super amazing sounds, got the mufflers, whatever a car does,
as long as it doesn't mess up everything else. Right. Because again, you don't want to be car poor. You know, like I've met dudes. Yeah,
you owe more on the car than it's worth, or some shit.
Yeah, like I remember like when I was younger, like in my early 20s, I remember like struggling just to compete and stuff like that, and I was spending my money on different things of that nature. And I remember seeing guys like driving. I remember there was a dude driving like it was at the time was like a brand new, like, was it 350Z or something? Like a Nissan. Yeah. Oh yeah, it was a beautiful car, right?
Nice.
It like had the turbo or whatever on it.
People are gonna make fun of us. What are y'all talking about?
Yeah,
that's not a nice car.
Yeah, I mean it was at the time.
Yeah,
for me.
They're good looking cars.
I mean his was like the souped up version, right? And so it had heated seats and had the turbo engines or turbochargers to it. So it was a friggin' super cool. He lived at his mom's house. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Save your money. Like wait a little bit, you know. And that's another thing too, is if I was talking to myself, I'd remind myself to have patience, because like when you're younger, you want it to be now. And when you look at people that are typically like that have some affluence to themselves, they're typically a little bit older. Like, you know, unless you're like one of those guys that comes up with some bright new idea, or if you just kind of something. Most of the time, if you look at statistically speaking, affluence comes a little bit older, because you got to kind of figure yourself out. You got to figure out, you know, which way are you going to contribute back to society, right? Because in the way it works with, you know, you have to bring something to market. What are you going to bring? What skill do you have, or what skill have you developed, right? Which skill have you developed over the years to give back that then has some sort of value that then you can return and get something from? You have to develop those skills. That takes time. And so typically speaking, you're going to looking a little bit later. And I think that, you know, when we're younger, and I think it's only gotten worse with things like social media. It's like when we're younger, like now, I want it now. I want it now. Like you see people having stuff, and you know, you like, I want that now. I want it now. You know, and it's just one of those things where things just don't happen that way. They take a little time, and you got to be willing to like. And honestly, man, like you got to kind of enjoy that come up too, because when you look back at it, you're like, man, that was fun.
It's worth it.
There's a funness to that come up when you're coming up, and you're just digging deep, and you know, like I look back at some of those memories, and sure, at the time they sucked a little bit, but at the same time I was having a ball, you know, with what I was doing.
Well, you're working hard, and you appreciate everything that you've done. You know, you appreciate all your hard work.
But you got to be patient with it, though. Yeah, it's going to take time.
I did the marshmallow test with my son. Did I tell you this? The marshmallow test.
You did the marshmallow test with him?
Yeah. I asked my wife, I was like, "Do you want to do it?" He's almost 5, so I did it with him. And my daughter wanted to do it too. She's like,
she would have grabbed that marshmallow, dude.
I'll tell you. So I explained it to him. I was like, Oliver, so the marshmallow test is basically, is it 10 or 15 minutes? 15 minutes. So you take a marshmallow, put it in front of your kid like you're torturing them. You put a marshmallow in front and you say, hey, so you can have this marshmallow now. You can eat it right now. No questions asked. But if you wait 15 minutes, you'll get 2 marshmallows. And so he's like looking at it and he's just like eyeballing it. He's kind of hovering over it. And I was like, Oliver, you can have 1 marshmallow now, or you can wait 15 minutes and you can have 2. And he's like, okay. And so he waited. He waited the whole 15 minutes.
Oliver, I figured would.
And he was like, is it time yet? I was like, nope, not yet. You know, it was like 5 minutes goes by. I was like, there's no way he's going to make another 10. But he just like hung out, stared at it, kind of like looked around. So I made him sit there the whole time.
Oh, you made him just sit?
Yeah, he sat.
Oh, wow.
He sat. Like he was looking around. Like I don't know if he had anything else to play with. But it was right there. Like he could have grabbed it. But he waited. And my daughter, I was like, after he did it, I did it with her. And when we did it, she just about turned 3. She's 3 now. And she was like, she takes a bite, and I was like, all right, well, that's it. She's one of those that likes to test. Like she likes to test you, and she took a bite of it and put it down. I was like, well, that's it, you're done. But it was interesting to see because he's kind of like, are you messing with me? Like what are you trying to pull here?
Yeah.
And
I
so
mean, I would be the same thing. I'm like, what's going to happen at 15?
Yeah.
If my parents had done that with me, I would have been like, what do you mean? What's going on here?
Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
But it was cool. So, you know, that's a test for like delayed gratification to see if like your kid has kind of patience, if they can kind of wait and do something a little difficult. And so how do you think, like you switching it up, if you would have done things differently, like what do you think how do you think your jiu-jitsu would have changed possibly? We got to bring it back to some jiu-jitsu talk.
Yeah, I think that like I would have competed more because I would have when I was younger. I competed a lot anyway, but I would have had more opportunities.
You think you could have accomplished more?
I don't know.
Like, jiu-jitsu.
I don't know. I just think I would have been able to do more with it. I would have been able to train more, compete more, fight more, all the stuff that I was doing. Because there were there was a couple of years, like good 3 solid years in my early 20s where I couldn't.
Your prime.
Well, I wouldn't say my prime, but it is what it is. So I think I lost a little bit there, but it was beneficial in a way because then I realized, all right, I don't want that to happen again. So that was a valuable lesson because again, if I made that mistake early instead of in my mid to late 30s, where it's harder to pivot, right? So it's like I figured out what I wanted to do then.
Well, like even taking the leap with your videos and stuff, like I think society or people in your community maybe that were like giving you shit about it. Like,
well, the biggest one when I was in 2009. I was actually going to start, or 2010. I was going to start doing videos because when I was at the gym, I was like, well, I'll start doing videos at the gym because I got all this extra time. And I remember I was going to do it, and the girl that I was dating at the time was laughing at me and stuff about it because it's a little difficult. And
that's somebody that you really value their opinion.
Sure.
Like you're intimately, like, I mean, you're emotional. They kind of know you in a way that's very
the way they feel about me matters to me.
Yes.
If it was some random person on the street, I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
But someone that like it really shut that down for a while.
Yeah.
And and I again, it's a negative thing because who knows what would have happened with that had I started back in 2010 instead of 2014, 15. It is what it is. But that said, it was a valuable lesson because again, I got a little bit hardened with my skin became a little harder, and now like when I do something, I don't care what anybody thinks. If it's what I want to do, I'm going to do it. So people say, "Oh, it's not going to work," or this. I don't care. I'm going to try it because most of the time when people say that anyway, it does great. It's just one of those things where people have this I don't know what it is, this drive either to cut people down or to try to keep people in their boxes. And I think they do it unknowingly a lot of times.
I think they do it because they're.
But I don't think people do it intentionally. Sometimes it's just I think that it just comes from a place in them where it just comes out. I don't think they do it intentionally. I think it's just something where it's this thing where naturally they just they come in like this person's trying to get out of their box. I want them back in that box because it makes things easy for me. Or if they're miserable as a person, they want other people to be miserable. I mean, you look around like social media right now. You got like a ton of miserable people, and all they do is just like crawl the internet waiting to spew misery on other people with negativity and everything else. To me, like I can't imagine living my life on a day-to-day basis where all I wanted to do was go around and like be negative. Oh God, could you imagine? It would drive me nuts.
But if that's their norm, if that's what they're used to, that's how they're used to make themselves feel better.
I guess.
Like if you're somebody that's unhealthy and you're all like judging people for wanting to go to the gym to be better, it's like, well, why can't I'm healthy. Like whatever you feel about Corona and all that stuff, like the people that are healthier more often than not are gonna have less problems with this virus. So like,
Sure.
like why
have you seen that a lot?
Well, I just think that's what the numbers say.
Oh no, I'm talking about like the people like being negative to people wanting to like go to the gym and stuff.
I mean, like I don't know. Like think about people that are like, oh, you shouldn't go to the gym. You could spread the virus, but then you got a bunch of people, getting large crowds.
Yeah, I like when that happened, they kind of lost me on all that stuff.
It's just we don't have to get political. We don't. Political, but like it's like take care of yourself, take care of each other, But the most important thing is take care of yourself and do what makes you happy, and as long as it doesn't hurt other people, that's kind of where you want to be at, But I don't know, man. It's just
here's something for you because you have a unique situation where if you guys don't know, Eugene is obviously a PT. Him and his wife, they actually own a retail business commercial spot, business spot where they do their.
We do massage therapy here. We do physical therapy. We got like infrared sauna and some group classes.
And
stuff.
you're trying to transition to that sort of being your own thing instead of working for another company.
Yeah, and the podcast is something else that it's kind of like I've got a few
a couple little things going.
Yeah.
Now how do you pivot to that? Like because again, like what do you think? Like let's say talking to yourself maybe some years ago. Like, what would you say, like, to yourself when you first started pivoting? What would be something maybe you've told yourself? Because, again, you're in a situation where you do have kids. You do have a wife. You do have things that you're beholden to, not just yourself. So if you decide you get a hair up your butt and want to shift, it's not as easy as just being like, well, let's see what happens, because you can't just throw caution to the wind because you got kids you got to take care of.
You have to have a solid foundation. Like my wife has got pretty solid established practice, and to me the hardest thing for me is taking the leap 100%. That's very difficult because that's unnerving, and I'm not a huge risk taker, so I always like dabble my foot in the water, put my foot in the water a little bit, and but it has got to be gradual, but then eventually you have to leap. Eventually you have to cut the safety net or the safety cord or whatever, but like it just has to be gradual. And like I think when I first did it, when I was working like 40 plus hours for, as a staff physical therapist, I would dread Mondays. And that's when I knew. I was like, I don't dread Mondays anymore. Like I would dread Mondays. I'd be like, oh God, it's Sunday. I would start getting anxiety on Sunday. I would almost not look forward to Sundays because I knew when Sunday came around, I got to go to work the next day. And I was like, just not looking forward to it. So I started realizing, like, is there more that I can do? Because I still loved helping people, but I was like, I don't know if that's the right environment. It actually happened when you and I, initially, you were setting up for a fight. You had a fight coming up. I think it was your last fight, and you were cutting weight.
2012.
Tweaked your knee. You tweaked your knee, and like, I just felt like when I was able to give you it wasn't anything I did. I kind of did a basic evaluation.
You gave me confidence.
I was able to give you like just a little peace of mind. And I was like, damn, that felt really good. That felt incredible. Like, I love, like, for some reason, jiu-jitsu and my career as a physical therapist, like my first job was like literally a mile away from the gym. And part of the reason I took it, I was like, oh, the gym's right there. I can train as much as I want, or, right after work. And that was a big part of me. I don't know, for some reason they were always intertwined, but I just loved working. I was always thinking about jiu-jitsu and thinking about injuries and being injured myself. And I just felt like those two things were undeniable. And I had to make that shift and that pivot. And over time, like I started taking, clients on and building my solo practice, just learning and researching. But I guess, I know it's a long-winded answer, but you have to be gradual. You have to like kind of take in a step-wise way. Like you got to make sure like you don't just, there's always a risk for failure, but like you want to try to minimize, and especially when you have kids and a family now, like you want to make sure all the other parts of your life are kind of working properly.
Probably experience a little bit of success before you decide to jump in.
Yeah, and have like, do your research. I'm one of those people that like to sit back. I don't like to tell people too much about like what I'm doing per se. And I like to just like see what people do and just like analyze it and then do my own. I'm one of those research type people. Like I like to sit back like, oh, well, that person did it. How do they do it? Can I model after them? I don't have to do it the same, but can I, you've been a great help in me doing videos and stuff. I'm like, Chewy, like, what am I doing here? Like, and you're like, dude, don't recreate the wheel. Like, you don't have to. You can model after people. There's blueprints there. And I think just like do your research. So I think if you're somebody who wants to pivot your career, your life, spend some time, make sure it's really worth that, that stress, because it is, and do your research, and take it, stepwise process, because eventually you're gonna have to leave, and that's unnerving. I think the simplicity of your situation, although you didn't have much, but you also had everything to gain and not a ton to lose, because we just go back and kind of, you're still at your mom's house, I guess. But and that's the beauty of your situation, I think. But the beauty of mine could be that I have all these things going for me. I do have a career in some sense, but I have a lot more to lose.
Well, nobody's path is perfect.
No, it's not linear. It's never linear.
Right. And so when you look at it, it's like you think about that kind of stuff. You think, there's not going to be this perfect situation where all the stars are going to line up. Eventually you come to that point where it's like, you just got to go.
It's the same in jiu-jitsu, man. We were talking about takedowns. Last couple of weeks were takedowns. And, morning classes with Mike Colley, who is a wrestler, and Jeff, who is the fellow brown belt, is a great training partner of mine, and we always battle it out. And and I'm like, man, I just have a hard time shooting in. And it's like, well, you got to be willing to fail, and you got to have a plan.
Yeah, well,
it's never going to be a perfect setup.
You also, with takedowns, you have to have an attitude of you have to possess tenacity.
You got to go for it.
Because if, for instance, when you go for takedowns, if you go for them halfway and you're not mentally really going after, you're not going to get a takedown. You might as well.
You failed.
If you have two grapplers, you could have one grappler that has perfect technique and kind of a wimpy mindset. You could have a grappler who has just they're okay technically, right? Got the fundamentals down, but their attitude, just have so much tenacity. That person's getting the takedown. The second grappler with the tenacity, because the way that you attack those techniques is just going. That makes a big difference. And the way that you throw yourself into it. And I think sometimes this can be the benefit to sometimes throwing yourself in and just leaping. Because then you have to develop that tenacity, because you're like, I gotta go. There is no longer I can fall back on this. I gotta go now. You have to go. But I think it's helpful to first have a little success, because at least it's almost like tiptoeing in the water a little bit, making sure, okay, there is something here. Now let's jump in, opposed to just picking out something where you've never done it before and it's not going to happen. But if you start to do something on the side and you get it going a little bit and there's a little bit of success, because that's what happened with the gym. I was teaching a little bit, and I could see that there was something there, and then it grew in my mind. Okay, let's take the leap. With the with some of the online business stuff that I do, I tested it out. Saw there's a little bit of momentum. All right, let's jump into it. Let's go whole 100% into it.
Yeah. Let's end it on this. Let's end it on this question.
All right.
See if you can think of this. What's the one thing you would change? If you had to go back and change one thing, what would one thing be?
If I had to go back and change?
Yeah, you could change one thing. Like say 18 years old, you just got out of high school or whatever. What would you do? What would you change?
I would have bought more Google stock.
That's a good one.
Yeah. No,
that's not something you change. That's something that you would do different.
No,
what's one thing you would change?
Yeah, one thing.
Is that the same thing? I just say the same thing.
It's pretty much the same thing.
It's not one thing you change.
But we'll keep it within reason. Because I was thinking if I could go back, I would buy a bunch of Google stock back in the day when they first went public.
Well, what's maybe a decision that you wouldn't have made?
I would. Honestly, what I would have done, looking at it, is one of two things, because these are two, I don't want to call them regrets, because they paid off in the long run, but they're things that I wish would have happened differently. Is one, I would have not made the decision to buy the house and do all that stuff. It was just a bad decision. I was too young. I wasn't doing it because I really wanted to. I was doing it because I felt like I was supposed to. That would have been one.
Yeah.
Second one is our other one. I would have started doing the videos sooner.
Yeah.
And if someone was gonna like basically cut me down about it, I would have been like, just get on out of here. You know, that probably would have good. Obviously, me and that person are not together anymore. There's probably a good sign. There's some stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
So I would have started sooner because I always wondered what happened if I would have kept doing that. If I would have done it back then.
How much better could you have been?
Well, how much better I would have been now, and
Yeah.
and I would have been on the platform earlier. You know, and all those things. You know, it all worked out for the best, but it's just one of those things where I was like, you just wonder. But other than that, those are the only things I think I would have changed, like as far as that I can think of offhand. What about you?
Man, I don't know if I would have. This is weird because I don't really regret going to college right after high school, but like I maybe would have taken a year or two off and like explored, just hung out and just enjoyed some freedom, done some jobs, some odd jobs, you know, whatever. Maybe traveled. That's one thing. Because you got the rest of your life to work, you know, or you know, whatever. But I would have probably done that.
Okay.
I would have probably done that maybe.
Do you think you would have ended up in physical therapy?
Yes, and
Okay.
I probably, because, so here's the thing. So when I was going to college right after, I was like, I had this thing in my mind that I always wanted to do physical therapy. I was like, it's like a grad school. I got to get my bachelor's and I got to go to grad. I was like, I just want to get a good job. And I was like, I'll just do nursing school. And so I spent the first 2 years of school kind of doing my prerequisites, but also going towards that nursing school kind of path. And so I spent some time. I spent probably a few semesters, you know, taking classes. So I feel like if I would have just gone with my gut, I wouldn't have, because I knew. I was like, because I remember I worked.
So what made you want to be a nurse over a physical therapist?
It was I still could work in the healthcare field. I thought it was a good job, solid job.
So you had to put down the marshmallow for a bit.
Yeah. I was like, I can get done and make more money out front. It's not gonna be as hard of a path. I'm not saying nursing is easy at all, but like it's
Just the years
There's a
in.
lot more involved in getting a bachelor's degree with all your prereqs.
Because you have a
I have a doctorate.
You have a doctorate.
Yeah.
Can I call you Dr. Eugene?
You can call me that. I don't go by that.
I want to start calling you Dr. Eugene.
You can. That's weird. You know, when we got married, it said Doctor and Mrs. on our thing.
What?
Like my wife did that on purpose. Like they had the table assignments, and my wife did that. Misha did that.
Dr. Eugene?
On purpose, because she knew I didn't want her to do that.
Dr. Eugene.
She would Doctor and Misha, and or Doctor and Mrs.
That's funny. It makes you seem super full of yourself.
Oh, man, you know that's one thing. Like I've never.
I'll start calling you Doctor.
You can call me that if you want, but
The Jiu-Jitsu podcast with Chewy and Dr. Eugene.
I did have it on there, I think. I said I have a doctorate in physical therapy on the
doctor.
Well, that adds a little more credibility, right? Than I'm
It
just
does.
a wacko that just like has no expertise.
Hey,
let
bro.
me feel your knee here, Chewy.
Hey, bro,
Move it around.
We live in the world of social media where basically you can put anything up on the internet, and this world of ubiquitous like internet connection where pretty much anyone can put up anything they want to, and people don't question things as much as they should. It's like it's on the internet; it must be true.
Who's the one guy? I think he did his podcast. He's really funny. He's kind of a goofball. He's a jiu-jitsu guy. He was making all these funny videos. He always, if he's fight to win, he has like a chicken,
a meal.
a meal. So he would make some videos. I saw
unicorn
this
guy.
one where he like has this video of him like standing on like this exercise ball and like balancing all this stuff and doing all this crazy stuff. He's like, I'm doing functional training, and it was just hilarious. But he's got a pretty good sense of humor. I enjoyed some of his videos, but like someone might look at that and be like, "Oh, I'm going to try that. That's got some carryover."
Well, there's a historian that I follow named Neil Ferguson, and he compares like the information that we get through the internet, like this basically it basically cheapens and democratizes content. He compares it to the printing press, because the printing press comes out, right, and it makes content cheaper to produce. You don't have to have scribes writing things down, and it democratizes it because now people who normally couldn't, they can produce it. Right, they can produce with the printing press. So all of a sudden you have information being spilled out. Now a lot of it can be good information. Some of it not so good. Like you think about things like the witch trials and stuff. A lot of these books were coming out of these printing press about witches, and they got spread around. People bought the ideas, and now you have where like anything that's online, you just can't, whether it's from a mainstream media or not, you can't trust half of it because you get a clip. You get a shortened clip that's not the full story, or you get something that's just completely untrue. Like it's just
But then you get like private platforms or privately owned companies like YouTube and Facebook, and they censor your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
that gets tricky.
That's a whole nother discussion.
That gets tricky.
That they censor you if you have an opinion that they don't like.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's a strange concept because a lot of people get their information through those sources.
Oh, I know.
But they're privately owned.
Well, that's the strange part, right? Because it's like, you have a privately owned platform, but it's like it's a privately owned business, but it still is pretty much where everybody gets all their info, but it's not considered like a utility. So we're in a weird time. I think we're very. It's very. There's a lot of similarities when you look at the robber barons of like the industrial age. Like you had your Carnegie and Vanderbilts, and because at one point, I mean, like when you read about like guys like Vanderbilt, he pretty much owned like all the different transportation outlets in these different areas. I think at one point they said that because the economy was much different during his time, like he owned like a third of the U.S. economy. Like was roughly in his control. And you
Did you ever go to the Biltmore? Have you ever been down there?
I haven't. I've seen it. It's pretty insane. It's crazy looking.
It's absurd for this day and age. Yeah. Like, they give you tours, and you're like, what?
Yeah, the wealth of those dudes is insane. I mean, Carnegie, he was the richest man at one point. And then, what he did afterwards was really interesting with all his money. But you look at that where...
I don't know that story, by the way.
It's an interesting one. But like they had all their money, and then the government came and like kind of busted some of them up. Like you had like Standard Oil and stuff with the Rockefellers and stuff like that. They came and busted them up with monopolies and things like that. So I imagine you're probably going to head that way at some point with like these companies. It just depends on how much money they grease palms with. But I mean, it's just one of those things where you'll probably end up having something like that at some point.
So I think the lesson here is try your best to not to filter your information as best as possible. Yeah, because
how do we even get on that?
I don't know. It's so readily available information. I don't know how we got on that. The printing press. I don't know.
Oh, we were talking about the internet and like talking about
like crazy information being out there.
Oh yeah,
people can like put anything.
Oh yeah, I was talking about how because you said you had to have a doctorate. And I was like, well, you say that, but I mean, there's people all the time putting out all kinds of kooky crap out there. That's they don't have anything to actually share as far as like actually credentials or even legitimate information. Yeah. I mean, hell, you even look at some of the we won't get into this, but there's a book called Sham, SH. Basically, the author. I'm not quite this. I don't hate self-development stuff as much as he does, but some of it he made some really good points in the book. Yeah. But he was like the self-help and actualization movement. Called Sham, and it was just going into all these different like self-development guru types and how a lot of them were just full of crap. Yeah. Like there was like, I guess this woman that would preach these good moral values, and meanwhile she's like cheating on her husband and taking other wives' husbands and like doing it's like, just all kinds of crap, and she had no credentials, no degrees or anything.
On the other side, just to be fair, I'm not saying that people that don't have the same credentials as me or somebody else can't have valuable information. Sure, they really can. And I think it's always good to listen to other people and try to at least just hear people out, for the sake of learning like their perspective. So I'm always like, if I see somebody on Instagram post some kind of technique and I'm like, I don't always I'm not really quick to just jump on and be like, this is bullshit. Or even though I have a strong opinion on it, I'm going to research it a little bit and make sure, that I come at it from a constructive way, like maybe more ask questions, sure. not so much as like a demeaning way, like a more of a questioning. That's what I try to be. And so Reddit is one of those things where like people love to troll on Reddit.
Oh man, Reddit's fun.
So I'll post some of my videos on Reddit and I'm always like anticipating someone's going to say something shitty to me. And I found it like, as long as you're like, come from a place of like, hey, I'm just trying to help people out, and like may not be what you agree with, but like this is my perspective. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just a perspective. Just is. And you come up from that, and then people are just like, yeah, that makes sense. Like you let people be their own, your own kind of judge on it. You figure it out. Nobody's telling you this is right, this is wrong. You kind of figure it out for yourself. And I think that's part of it. Like you make your own opinion, which is important, which is what everybody should do. And you should listen. We should listen to most people.
All right. So with that, if you're going to listen to us, hopefully you got something from that as far as if you're trying to make a pivot, if you're younger looking for some advice or whatever. Hopefully you got something from that, because I know it's a very different episode than the usual specifically jiu-jitsu focused. But
yeah, but like always, like I think we go based on the thing of having like one nugget. Take one thing from the episode, one piece of information, and or at least if it sparks your interest, that's really important too. So
yeah. So that was the podcast, guys. We got personal. You guys got to hear some old stories from Chewy. Maybe some of that stuff was interesting to you. I got to hear about me sleeping on an air mattress in the middle of the night. And hopefully whenever Jess and I get our new place, because we're still sort of on the lookout, whenever we get our new place, I'll do like a tour of it and just kind of show everybody through it. Casa de la Chew.
The Chewy compound.
The Chewy compound. Jokingly, it's funny. I was telling, I think I did on one of the podcasts, I said I was looking for a place because I wanted to start a cult.
Oh, boy.
Making a joke. It's like halfway anyway. Start a big group, like, but basically, because me and Jess think it would be kind of cool to have like a big bunch of land, and then just have like a bunch of people like that's their house over there, that's their house over there, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, get some acres and just be around cool people all the time. Imagine, like, what if you could buy like a block of a neighborhood and just have all your friends live around? It'd be the coolest thing ever.
So I experienced that in a way.
With your parents?
No. So we were getting my daughter a bike.
Uh-huh.
And we were getting her a bike on Facebook Marketplace. And so, I was like, Dad, come with me. And, you never know.
Mm-hmm.
People might rob you or something. Anyways. So we're literally like...
Your dad's going to be the one to stop him, too.
Well, my dad will. He's got them crazy ninja skills. But just good to have somebody else
know,
there.
man. I'm just giving you
but he was just going with me. And so we pull into this regular neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
And then all of a sudden, this neighborhood's kind of older. And there's like this gate.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, I guess we got to go in here. We're taking the GPS. And it's like this giant house. And then all these other properties around it.
Uh-huh.
And so these kids are around a fire pit. And I'm like, hey, we're here to pick up the bike. And yeah, it's over here in the garage.
Uh-huh.
And then so the guy comes out and, he gives me the bike. We exchange, I give him the money. And I was like, do you live here? He's like a normal dude. He's like, yeah, I was like, a bunch of us all went in, pulled our money together, and bought this whole compound. It's this giant house,
yeah, and
it's got all these structures, they're basically they're garages with houses on top.
Yeah,
and it's in the middle of just the city limits. It's
That's
they
cool.
have this compound, and he's just we just all pulled our money together and bought this big place. I was like, this is some kind of
cool
cult thing, but it was awesome. It's I don't know. He wasn't dressed fancy. Everybody looked kind of normal,
yeah.
Everyday people. Just
I mean, to me, it doesn't have to be culty. You don't have to
right.
You don't have to have weird.
But it's kind of neat, right?
All I'm saying is I like certain people.
Sure.
Imagine if you could have all of your favorite people that you love seeing on a regular basis, and you guys all just were in close proximity to each other. So you knew who your neighbors were.
And
so
just have a gym right there in the middle. Everybody just shows up to the gym.
There it is, dude.
Oh, it's snowing? Doesn't matter. Just walk over the gym.
Walk over the gym. Yeah.
That'd be kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah, but anyway. People are like, Chewy's creepy.
Not really, man.
No, I just think about, because I've always enjoyed, for instance, living in, I used to have roommates all the time that trained. And it was always cool to just have people around that were cool, that you enjoyed being around.
Yeah.
Or I remember my coach, Colin, used to live right down the street. So I remember we used to go running at 6 a.m. And he'd come, he was better. He used to be a better early bird than I was. So he would knock on the door and wake me up. And I'd get up and go run. So again, it's just those things are being around people you enjoy being around, rather than everybody's had a shitty neighbor.
Sure.
Imagine you had a neighbor that he's like, hey, you want to roll? Let's go roll. Or you know what I mean? Whatever. Just
we'd never get anything done. All we would do is train jiu-jitsu all day. It's so easily accessible.
We get really good at jiu-jitsu. I mean, I'm really good already, but.
Thanks, Chew.
Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the podcast. Again, always, if you want to support the podcast, check out Charlotte's Web, charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu. Save 15% on your order on whatever you want to buy. Again, I know that CBD is one of those things where it has a lot of, there's so much ambiguity to what it does and everything else. And even what we can say, by the way, it's so hard to talk about, because it's everything is so, well, you can say that, you can't say that. My sort of encouragement to you is, if you want to try it out for a month, see what you feel. right? Because that was what happened to me. I tried it for a month. I thought it was amazing. I was like, dude, I feel so much better in a myriad of different ways. Everything from like just sort of like inflammation brought on from like exercise and things like that. I felt great. So I kept using it. I've been using it ever since. So my encouragement to you is if you've been thinking about it, just try it out. Try it out for a month, see what you think. And again, save yourself some money on the order. And again, if you want to buy yourself some jiu-jitsu related swag, go over to epicrollbjj.com. Promo code is Chewjitsu, 15% on the order. And if you want to, last two things I'll give you. If you want to get some of my emails that I send out Monday through Friday, which will have everything from Q&As, funny emails like I was talking about in the podcast about my friend that got the black eye, to specific jiu-jitsu tips, to just anything that I've got going on. Like if you want to make sure you know what's going on in like the Chewy universe, if we've got like new gear or new events going on or whatever it might be, go to chewjitsu.net and you'll see a thing that says free ebook. You can get it there. And lastly, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can go to patreon.com/the jiu-jitsu podcast. You can subscribe. You can cancel whenever you want to. You can get access to all the content, and that money goes back into the podcast to support it, to keep it rolling. And we're gonna have a podcast room soon. It'll be finished, and we'll be having some guests in house. So
Yeah,
that'll be fun.
And it's a great way. Like, you know, a lot of times we interact with people on Patreon. Like it's easier to, because there's not as many people on there. So like they'll really, like if they have questions and stuff, and you have suggestions, and we have, you know, stuff like that. I think it's a great way to interact with us if you want to do that. But yeah.
All right, guys. Talk to you next week.